What's going on YouTube? Today we're going to talk about Shapton Pro stones, specifically the No Kuromaku edition, which I believe are Japanese made, and then they're distributed into the US. A little bit cheaper than the regular Shapton Pros too. Come with a nice carrying case, foam pad. They transport really nicely. And then Shapton, ceramic whetstone, made in Japan. This is a 220. So I just wanted to give my experience with them. Here is a Shapton Glass 500. I just wanted to talk quickly about that. This is one that I recommend. It's probably one of the hardest low grit sharpening stones I've ever come across. I've been using this for quite some time, and I've probably only taken off maybe 15% of its life, and I've had it for easily a year. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm gonna sharpen a knife every month. I'm talking about like razor restoration, straight razor restoration, kitchen knives, like regularly sharpening this stone. My poor wife, I took over part of our kitchen table with my stones because I'm frequently sharpening. So instead of taking everything out and putting it back every single day, basically, some of the stones I'll keep out on our table just so that it's easier to access. But this one, for the money especially, I think I paid $55 for it. And then all these are, you can get them from anywhere from like $30 to $50, depending on the pricing. I definitely wait for a sale. Sometimes, they'll jack up the pricing, but I think, like $50 you can get a damn good stone, and you don't need all these. I've come to learn that I didn't need a lot of these. The 220, I've only used a handful of times. When I need a real low grit stone, a lot of times I'll just use like a diamond stone. Under that is the 320. The 320 is good. It's a little soft for it's a low grit stone, so it's going to shed abrasive quickly. I did take an inch off of this. I cut a 1-inch stone to make for the Edge Pro. That's why obviously it's a lot smaller than the others, but it also shows that I was willing to cut it. I don't use it that often. Most used by far, these two stones right here, 1000 and 2000. And sorry about that. I would say someone's at the door. I would say the 1000 is probably the most versatile. It's a tough call between 1000 and 2000. The 2000 will sharpen at probably like 60%, 70% the speed of the 1000, but it's probably about 50% harder. These stones are, actually I think the 2000's older. I broke my original 1000 and I had to replace it. In the meantime, I already had the 2000, I believe like 2 or 3 months before. So let's say the 1000 is 2 months newer, and when you compare the thickness of them, and I use this 2000 probably easily 50% more often than the 1000, and the 2000 is still another 20 or 30% thicker. So the 2000 doesn't shed grit anywhere near the speed of the 1000, but it cuts, like I said, almost as fast. Obviously not as, not quite as fast, because it's it's a higher grit, so it's not going to polish it, it's not going to sharpen as quickly. 2000 is basically your bridge between sharpening and polishing. These are 5,000 and 12,000. That's strictly polishing. 1,000 and below, I would consider sharpening, establishing bevels. I wouldn't use the 1,000 to do a lot of like correcting on like a knife, but I would use it for correcting on a razor. Straight razors are a little different than knives. You don't want to create as much of a burr. Obviously, you want to like just get to the edge of creating a burr, or a really, really fine one. You don't want to create a huge burr and on a knife you don't either, but you want to create a burr so that you know that you're forming the apex correctly. The reason I brought up the 500 is the 500 gives me the best of both worlds between these 220, 320 softer stones that wear fast and have to be flattened a lot and that sort of deal, and the 1,000 that's underneath this. The speed of these and the edge that comes off the 500 Shapton glass is almost identical to the Shapton Pro 1000. It's a little bit less, it's a little bit like more toothy, but the polish is really, really close. And this doesn't need, like if you're just strictly sharpening knives, this Shapton glass 500 won't need to be flattened much at all. For razors, it's a little bit different. You need to keep a flat stone so that it's a straight razor for a reason. You need to have a straight edge, unless obviously you have a spine that has a curve to it, or a smile, what they call in the razor world. But so, all right, enough about the 500. Obviously, it's one of my favorite stones, but so we're talking about the pros, or the No Kuromaku pros. If you're a knife guy, I would say if you're not going to get glass and you want to get a little bit cheaper of stones, I would say the 320, the 1000, and the 2000 are your best bet. 2000 is like perfect for kitchen cutlery in my experience. If you have harder steels, you can go you can go up to 8,000, but for me, I would rather stay around like the 2000 and strap on 1 micron diamond diamond spray. That's what I use personally. But they also make a 1500. It's blue. It looks a lot like this. I guess you could go for like a Shapton Glass 500 or this 320, and you really could go straight to the 1500. Off the 500, you definitely can go straight to a 1500. Off the 320, you can. Some guys are like, 220, 500, 1000, 1500, 2000, 3000, 5000, 8000. I don't. I'll jump. With the straight razors, I'll obviously follow more of like a direct progression, but I feel like you can jump around with knives, especially with freehand sharpening. So, quick rundown on like polishing speeds and stuff like that. 320 cuts, well, let's start with 220. So, 220 cuts really fast. It also sheds abrasive really fast. You have to keep it wet pretty much all the time. It actually will stay as wet as the 320. They're about the same, but the 220 sheds probably twice as much grit. It's definitely a dirtier stone. I think if you're gonna spend the money and get the right setup, pay the extra maybe $20 for the glass. All the low grit glass stones, in my opinion, are better than the No Kuromaku or the Shapton Pros. If you don't have the money for it, the pros are awesome either way. I just think flattening is kind of a pain sometimes, so I don't mind spending the extra 15 or 20 bucks on, like, this 500 is probably going to last me another 2 or 3 years before I go through the rest of it. Again, so 320, it will drink some water in the beginning, especially if you just flattened it, especially in, like, with a coarse, like I use my Atomo 140 diamond plate. It'll drink up some water for probably about a minute or two. I'll just keep throwing water on over and over until it stops, drinking right in. You'll see in the beginning, if you have this, that the water pretty much disappears. 1000, again, is probably your most versatile. The 1000 and 2000 I find are the most versatile by far. 2000, in my opinion, is my most versatile stone because I use razors too. Like I said, the 500 glass and the 2000 Shapton Pro, this green one, those are my money stones. 1000 will hold water on it for minutes. 2000 will hold water on it for probably 20-25 minutes. The 1000 maybe 3 to 5-ish, depending on your your environment and stuff like that. 5000 and 12,000, those are they're freaking hard. The 5,000 is basically the same width, as how it came. I mean, when I go to flatten this thing, it takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds, because you're never gonna dish it out that much. You don't put, you're not putting much pressure on these stones when you're just polishing. I'd say the 5,000 is probably my next most used after the 500, the 2000, then the 5,000. 12,000, I very rarely use it, especially since I moved over to Japanese natural stones. I would say if you could see, there's no grit on it. It hasn't been used in a long time. Kind of a shame. But if you're a knife guy, I don't think you'll ever need this 12,000. If you're a razor guy, it leaves a nice edge. You just have to, what I've found anyways, you just have to strap out the bite of synthetic stones. Synthetic stones polish, I don't know how to easily explain it, but the grooves that it cuts in the steel are more pointy than natural stones. So the way that your edge lines up at the end of your bevel, and I'll just pull out my Mannix too. So at the point of the apex, at the very bottom, on synthetic stones, you have a really sharp angled groove, if that makes sense. So your grooves are pointy from your stone. If you have a natural stone, they're more of a U shape. They're cupped kind of. So they're a softer, it's still just as sharp, if not sharper in some cases, but the way the edge forms at the apex isn't as pointy as synthetics. Naturals have, especially when you use a Nagara stone on Japanese naturals, or you use a slurry on cauticles and stuff, the way that it cuts is much less aggressive as synthetics, and it leaves a much more comfortable edge, and that's why a lot of guys use naturals. But yeah, I just wanted to give a quick rundown on the Shapton Pros. Again, I highly recommend them. For the money, I think they're the best. I know Choceras are the highly coveted stones that everyone loves. They're awesome stones, don't get me wrong. For the money, they're great. Shapton Pros are, in my opinion, almost as good. For the money, I think they're the best. Shapton, I think, the glass or the pros, I think they're phenomenal stones. Again, the 1000 and 2000, you can't go wrong. if you're a knife guy, they'll be perfect for like kitchen cutlery or just for like a working edge. The only glass stone that I really stand by is that 500. You know, I have more glass edge pro stones that I use for like my pocket knives and stuff, but for cutlery, I think these, you know, the 1000 and 2000, just, they can't be beat. They're just awesome freehand stones. They have good feedback. All these stones have good feedback for the most part. The 5000, 12,000, obviously you don't get as good a feedback because they're so hard. But the 1000, I think, gives the best out of all of them. The 2000 is almost as good, but not quite, because you're starting to get into polishing. And then the 320 and 220, you know, they're so aggressive that the 320 actually is a little less. It cuts a lot like the 500 actually in the aggression. I get better feedback out of the 500, but that's just my opinion. And I probably wouldn't go over like a 63 Rockwell. ZDP 189, I have a Spyderco Endura that they say is like 64 or 65 HRC. These will cut it, but it's also not like a, you know, a crazy vanadium or like, you know, carbide rich steel. I think it's just carbon and chromium, I want to say. So, you know, like your S110V, your 10V, you know, like your Maximet. These stones are not meant for that. These stones are meant for like your Wusthof kitchen knives, your Shun kitchen knives. Like, that's what these are for. Obviously, you know, softer steel too. They're good for like chisels and stuff. You know, chisel irons. Kamasori blades, straight razors. These are perfect for. So, if you guys have any questions about these, you know, granted that someone's actually watching this video, you know, comment or message me, and you know, I'll try to answer them as best I can. So yeah, look out for more videos. I guess this will be my third one up. I'm trying to crank them out to get a little bit of a, you know, a repertoire going and get my name out there. If you guys are here from Outpost 76, thank you, Outpost 76. I know he's going to do a video. I made some straps for him. Gerald, he's a great guy. I love his videos, and his whole crew. You know, like Super Steel Steve and In the Pocket and Banner 24/7, all those guys I watch. Been watching for a long time. I just never made videos. But yeah, keep an eye out, and thank you for watching if you're watching this. And give a like, or, you know, subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks, guys.